This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi Sai. So we're continuing the Seif Shoneh Halachos. Today's breakfast sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Shuki Yifat, in honor of the birth of their new daughter, Tiska L'mitzvos, Tiska L'gadla, L'tar L'chop L'masam Tovim. Be'ezus Hashem, our campaign is going to be in full force, May 29th, and the page should be up today. In the coming weeks, we're going to be having two major meetings. One, a live meeting for the people in the shul, and we're going to ask everybody to make a team and commit to raise a certain amount. That's basically how this is going to happen. And then we're going to have an online meeting, a Zoom meeting for the listeners. So, Bez Hashem, the shul meeting will be this coming Sunday, a week from today. Sunday night, we'll try to give you dinner, and if everybody could attend, and even better if you could let me know during the week what's an amount that you think you could pull together from your former friends and former people who liked you before you started collecting from them, then that would be really good. Or if anybody online will join us to create a team, that will be, you'll have a big chelek, Bez Hashem, in the new operation. Okay, so before we start the new Inyan, the last year we did online because of the Levaya, so I want to reiterate one point very briefly, and then we'll go on to the new material. If I were to ask you, what is the most important thing to learn? You know, if you can only learn one thing, Gemara, Halacha, every day, something, if you only had, let's say, 2 minutes a day to learn, or 5 minutes a day to learn. So, you know the answer to that. In Ois Lamed Beis, the Reb Chaim brings to the Mishnah Berurah that a person has to set aside time every single day to learn Sifrei Musar, whether a little bit or a lot. Because the greater you are, the greater is your Yetzer Hara. And the medicine for the Yetzer Hara is the rebuke of Chazal. And as much as we know this, and as much as we learn this, we always forget about it. And there's a good reason we always forget about it. Because the Yetzer Hara is very happy for us to learn Gemara. He's okay, he's cool with it. And he's very happy for us to learn Halacha. But he's not very happy for us to learn Musar. Because Musar is the only thing really that will accelerate our growth in this world. Okay, let's continue on in Ois Lamed Gimel Lamed Daled. Actually, we're up to Ois Lamed Hey. I'm just going to read the beginning of Lamed Gimel by way of introduction. Toiv loymar koydem Parshas HaKorbanos, Parshas HaAkedah. Before you say Korbanos, it's a good thing to say the Parsha HaAkedah. But today we're speaking about Korbanos. And the basic thing is, what's interesting is that in our Sidurim, they don't even print Korbanos. It's not even in the Siddur. It's not there. Whatever you think is in the Siddur is not Korbanos. Ezel Mekayman is not Korbanos. Abaye have a Masadar is not Korbanos. What's Korbanos? The Parsha of the Korban. The Parsha in Vayikra of the Oila. The Parsha of the Chatas. The Parsha of the Asham. And if you're chayiv one of these things, then you need to read from the Torah those psukim, and then say Yehiratza, and then it should be considered as if I brought a korban. But in our Siddurim, in your regular Art Scroll Siddur, or any Siddur you have, the Korbanos are not even printed. Now, so what we want to know this morning is, do I got to say that stuff? I mean, can you pass the Siddur? Well, bottom line, can I come to shul, say brachos, and start with Hoidu or Mizmor Shir? Is there anything I need to? Okay, obviously I need to make a bracha Netilas Yadayim. Ma toivu Adonai Olam Yigdal. You know, if you want to come a half hour early, go for it. But it's not brought in Shulchan Aruch. It's a very beautiful thing to say. But your objective is you got to get to Shemona Esrei with the Tzibur. So okay, we have to say Brachas HaShachar. We have to say Brachas HaTorah. We have to say the 15 brachos Shanasan Lasach Vin La'avchem Ben Yom U'Vein Loila. And then we know we have to say the whole Psukei de Zimra, starting from Mizmor Shir Hoidu. What about Akedah? Do you have to say Akedah? No, you're not obligated to say Akedah. It's a good thing to do. It's a nice thing to do. However, can I have a Mishnah like Aleph? What? Like saying Torah, no? Yeah, it's learning. It's learning, but besides that, it's a good thing to do as part of your davening. It's a nice thing to do, but it's not obligatory. Nobody ever said it's obligatory. And I'm not undermining it. It's important for a person to know what he has to do. The Shulchan Aruch just says, Toiv loymar Parshas Geit. It's a good thing to do. But before that, the Mechaber said, Toiv ma'at tachanunim b'kavana, better less with kavana than more with not so much kavana. Now, the Mishnah Berurah brings down, someone who knows how to learn, he could refrain from saying many of these tefillos and bakashos. It's better to learn. However, we want to know this morning, we want to walk away this morning, what do you have to say? Okay, so do I need to say Akedah? No, it doesn't say anywhere I have to say it. Do I need to say Lo'olam Yehei Adam Yirei Shamayim B'Seisur HaGoloi? Shema? Doesn't say anywhere you have to say it. Do I have to say the Kiyar? Doesn't say you have to say it. Does he have to say Trumas Hadeshan? Do I have to say Ketores? Lo Kasuv, that any of these things I have to say. But we're going to see this morning that there's one thing you do have to say. There's one thing you do have to say. Let us read Ois Lamed Hey, and then in your booklet I have the Maramakamas. So Ois Lamed Hey. Toiv loymar Parshas HaKorbanos Kodem HaTefila ubebeis HaKnesses. It's a good thing to say the Parsha of Korbanos before davening and in shul. Now, that's a very interesting little addition, in shul. Why do I have to say it in shul? Am I allowed to say Berachos HaShachar at home? Of course I could say Berachos HaShachar at home. It doesn't say anywhere I have to say it in shul. Why, when it comes to Korbanos, is it brought that you should do it in shul? So look in the last page of your booklet. In the last page of your booklet, there's a commentary on the Levush called the Eliyazuta. The Eliyazuta, and the Eliyazuta, I would call this on page 5. The Eliyazuta in Ois Sivkat and Yud Aleph says, Umatzasi Kasav, the Yomer Parshas Korbanos B'Beis HaKnesses, Da'oz Havalei Ki'ilu Hikriv B'Beis HaMikdash. Since the whole purpose of Korbanos is to be makriv a carbon, and you have to be makriv a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash, so you want to say Korbanos. So in other words, if you're on the way to shul, you say, I have 5 minutes, I might as well do Korbanos. There seems to be a preference to dafka do it in shul. Now, here's a very interesting thing. There's a difference between Torah and Tefillah. During Tefillah, am I allowed to do something else while I'm davening? No. While I'm davening, am I allowed to check out the ingredients of smart milk in the middle of davening? No, you can't do that. Could I, mosey around and start seeing how much changes in the cup? No. You're not allowed to do any. Am I allowed to dry my hands when I say the bracha Mitzvah? You can't do any activity during Tefillah. You have to stop and be completely focused on Tefillah. By Torah, we don't find that halacha. So the question is, what about during Korbanos? Is Korbanos Tefillah, or is Korbanos Torah? That's a very interesting question. What would you say about that? Is Korbanos... Now, in Avel, is an Avel allowed to say Korbanos? An Avel is allowed to daven, an Avel is not allowed to learn. So can an Avel say Korbanos? So the halacha is no. The Mishnah Berurah says an Avel cannot say Korbanos. So that obviously means that Korbanos are not part of the Seder HaTefillah. So what do you mean? I thought it's something that you're supposed to do every day. So the Mishnah Berurah says in Siman Aleph Sivkat and Yud Zayin that an Avel should not say Korbanos. The Mishnah Berurah says in Siman Nun that anything is Miseder Hayoim, like Eza, you're allowed to say. So the halacha is, Ezehu Makaiman you're allowed to say, because that's not Korbanos. That's Miseder HaTefillah. Korbanos that we're talking about are the Parshios of Korbanos is Torah, and not everybody says it. However, they asked Reb Chaim that
Korbanos is not Tefillah, you said?
The Parshios of the Korbanos, the Parsha, the Oila, Parsha is Torah. Now, therefore, during Korbanos or the Shir Shel Yom, is it like Torah or Tefillah? That's not on the sheet. We know during Tefillah you can't be Oisek b'Malacha. During Torah you're allowed to. Reb Chaim says Korbanos and the Shir Shel Yom is Torah. So during Torah you're allowed to be Oisek in a Malacha. It's very interesting.
So we're allowed to interchange. I do Tefillah.
You could check out the ingredients. You could check out the ingredients of Smaga during the Shir Shel Yom, according to this.
No, I mean,
The what?
I start Tefillah, then I can learn do Torah, then I go back to do Tefillah. So it's not
certain Torah, not all Torah. Now, we just said that the Eliyah Zuta says you should say Korbanos in the shul. If you look on the final sheet, in the Shari Tshuva, the Shari Tshuva says, the Shari Tshuva is a commentary on Shulchan Aruch, on the fourth wide line, he says, Uve Bechar Shar Kasav Sham, Demash Kasav Eliyah Zuta, Sheyikro Beis HaKnesses, Dugmas HaAvoda, Gam Kein Lachash. Basically, he dismisses the Eliyah Zuta. You don't have to say Korbanos in shul. It's like you're bringing Korbanos, but you don't have to get so carried away with the analogy to the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, so back to Sivkat and Lamed Hey and Reb Chaim, Toiv Loim Parshas HaKorbanos Kadam HaTfila Uve Beis HaKnesses, but Ach Shelo Ya'achar Deize Zman Kriyishma, you don't want to delay the Zman Kriyishma, Utfila B'tzibor. Now the rest of the Siman, Reb Chaim is quoting from the Bir Halacha of what Korbanos is. He says, "V'tzarech lehis vadois me'umad koidem kriyas parshas haKorbanos." You need to say vidoy, standing, before you say the parsha of Korbanos. Uchvar nidfas haseder b'sefer avoda tama. The correct order of Korbanos is found in the sefer avoda tama. Again, it's not found in our Sidurim. So the Korbanos that the Poskim and the Shulchan Aruch is talking about is not found in the Siddur. So what is the order of the Parshas? Now some of it we have, but the main thing, which is it's almost inexplicable, the main Korbanos is not in the Siddur. So like he says, Lamed Vav, V'zeh Seder Parshas, Yomer Parshas Hakiyar, V'achar kach Tzumas Hadeshen, V'achar kach HaTamid, and then the pasuk V'shachar Oisai Al Yarach HaMizbeach Tzofayim Lefnei Hashem. These three things are in the Siddur. V'chol ha'omer pasuk zeh, anyone who says the pasuk V'shachar Oisai Al Yarach HaMizbeach Tzofayim Lefnei Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Zocher HaKedas Yitzchak. God remembers the covenant of Yitzchak. Uve Parshas HaTamid Shekorin B'tzibur Uve Kol Ram Roi Lamoid. Interesting. Do you know of any shul that says the Parshas HaTamid B'tzibur? I never saw it. I never heard of it. It's supposed to be done B'tzibur. And the
It's kind of in the tzibur, right?
I mean,
What's his name? The Shliach Tzibur.
the Shliach Tzibur, if maybe he says L'olam Yehei Adam Yirei Shamayim B'Seis V'Galoi or Shema Yisrael, that he says out loud. The Tamid. When did you ever even know that the Shliach Tzibur is up to the Parshas HaTamid during davening? Yeah, I don't think any Ashkenazi shul you ever hear the guy, Vayidaber Hashem Moshe Limmer Tzavas B'nei Yisrael. You don't hear it. You hear it? I don't think so. Avol B'shar Parshas Yochel Leishev. And now, during the Tamid you should stand, and after other Korbanos you could sit. V'achar kach Parshas Mizbeach Mikdar K'Toras, U'Parshas Samonei HaK'Toresh V'Asiyasan. Now, I want to take you now to page 3 and 4. 3, 4, and 5. And that is basically, Rabbi, what I want you to walk away from this today is that the Parshas HaTamid is Kemat Chiyuv. I don't want to say a Chiyuv outright, but it's Kemat Chiyuv. If you look in Siman Memches, the Torah says, V'kavu likrois Parshas HaTamid. They were koivea to say Parshas HaTamid. Why? K'de'isa b'medrash. That Bizman she'ein Beis HaMikdash kayam, mata hayaleim. Avraham Avinu said to God, what's going to be with Klal Yisrael when the Beis HaMikdash is not standing? Amar Lai, so Hashem said, Kvar hikdamti lahem seder Korbanos. I already gave them the seder Korbanos. Kozman she'oiskin bahen. As long as Klal Yisrael is oisik in the Korbanos, mala ani aleim ki'ilu hikrivim lefanai. I consider it as if they brought the Korbanos. The Tur seems to learn that when the Gemara tells us that when the Beis HaMikdash is not standing, Hashem was koivea the parsha of Korbanos, that refers to the Parshas HaTamid. So I don't know why this did not make it on the sheet. In the footnotes of the Das Noita, he brings the Shulchan Aruch Harav of the Baal HaTanya. The Baal HaTanya says explicitly, ready for this? Siman Memches, Nohagu kol Yisrael v'kavu choiva al atzman. Likrois Parshas HaTamid b'chol yom. So you want to know, is there anything that I must say between brachos and Psukei de Zimra? It's a Parshas HaTamid. Now, if it's between that and Psukei de Zimra goes first. Now, can you say Korbanos after davening? Meaning, let's say I didn't have time to say it. I saw Reb Chaim said, yeah. Hayim efshar loimer Korbanos achat tefillah? Efshar. He quotes over here the Hagois Yesh Neichlem. Im ein shas loimer kol zeh kodem atfila al kopanim yomer. If you don't have time to say all the Korbanos, at least say the Parshas HaTamid. So Lamaisa, you're allowed to say the Tamid after. It's better to say it before. What about the Tamid before Mincha? It's interesting because we say both here. This includes the Tamid of Mincha. Right. Now in the Ashkenaz Sidurim, they don't even give you the option. I think in the Nusach Sfard they do give you Korbanos by Mincha time. I don't know. Maybe when we get to Halachos Mincha. Here, but I want to show you one thing in the Shibayei Haleket. Take a look in the Shibayei Haleket. Was Reb Tzidkiya ben Avraham Haroife. He was a doctor, and he was one of the Rishonim in Rome. And he brings in Siman Hay. Let's read 1, 2, 3 on the 5th line. V'yesh soimchin al zeh. Okay, let's start from the beginning. V'tzarch levarich berchas haTorah. You have to make berchas haTorah. V'likrois Parshas HaTamid, and say the Parsha of Tamid. Now, what does Parshas HaTamid got to do with berchas haTorah? It almost sounds like the Parsha HaTamid, since you're making berchas haTorah, you need to learn after. The Parsha HaTamid will be the limud for berchas haTorah. V'shoyna b'tchila meseches brachos. First you learn meseches brachos. What's that talking about? What Masechta Brachos? V'shoyna perek ezam v'kamin shal zvachim, because we say in Kedushin la'olam yishalish adam shnoisav shlish b'mikra, shlish b'mishnah, shlish b'talmud, and a person doesn't know how long they're going to live, so you got to break up your time. V'yesh soimchin al zeh ma'ashanu karim Parshas HaTamid b'chol yom. Some people, their chumash for the day is a Parsha HaTamid. And the whole Seder that's written in the Siddur of Rav Amram Goin, sheyesh by Isek Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud, Halachos, Agados. Now this is the Ikar. The Kasav Rav Binyamin Achi, Shekriyas Parshas Tamid Choiva. Teidalacha. You ready for the proof? Why, when we daven Tfilas Musaf, do we say the Psukim of Musaf? Right? Whenever you daven Musaf, you always say the Psukim of the Korban Musaf. So why, when we daven Shachris, do we not say the Psukim of the Korban of Shachris? It's a Pela Atzuma. Every time we daven, we always say the Psukim of the Korban corresponding to that davening. So why in Tfilah Shachris do we not read the Parshas Tamid? Must be because it's a chiyuv to say it beforehand. It must be because we did already. That's the raya. That's the raya that the kriya of the Parshas Tamid is a chayva. Teidalacha shukein sharei ein mazkirin Parshas Tamid betfila kamay shemazkirin psuke hamusafin betfilas musaf. And Reb Chaim says, is it okay? Bottom line, Amiras Korbanos l'fnei Shachris u'Mincha ha'im zachiyav oiloi. Bottom line, do you have to say it or not? Answer: Einoi chiyav. It's not obligatory. Rak inyan nachayin chutz mi Parshas HaTamid dava karov l'chiyav. Now, what about Mincha time? Reb Chaim says v'yisbar b'makom acher. So I have to look in what he says by Mincha time. Okay, but at least by Shachris, it's Karov L'chiyav. Karov L'chiyav. Okay, so I want to just read the rest of Siman Aleph in Reb Chaim, and then next week, hopefully, we could move on to Siman Beis. Okay, here are the various Parshas. Parshas Hakiyar or Parshas Chumas Hadashen, Yachaloi Mar Koydem Ayom. It's very interesting because if it's like bringing a carbon, we know that the carbon tamid and all the carbonos are brought during the day. So let's say you are you allowed to say you wake up very early? You wake up 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 a.m. It's pitch black outside. Could you start with the carbonos? So, or Reb Chaim was asked, what about somebody who davens vasikin? If he's davening vasikin, then his carbonos are going to be in the middle of the night. Reb Chaim says from alois hashachar is already considered yoim legabe amiras carbonos. So he says, Parshas Agir, Parshas Chumas Hadashin, Yachal Omer Kadem Hayoim, Ava Parshas HaTamid, Ushar Korbanos, Lo Yomer Ela B'Yoim. You should only say it during the day. V'mein Loi Pnai, if you don't have time, Yachal Omer Gam Parshas HaKorbanos B'Layla. You could say it at night. Sivkatan Lamed Ches. V'achar Kach Yomer Parshas Oila, then you say the Parsha of the Oila. The next couple of Seifim, it's not printed in our Siddur. We don't have the Parsha of the Oila in the Siddur. We don't have the Chatos. We don't have the Shlamim. V'achar Kach Yomer Parshas Oila, from Mitchilas Vayikra ad V'imin Hatzoin. V'achar Kach Yomer Yiras Mofanecha Sheyehei Zeh Choshev U'Makubal Kilo Krafti Oila. V'achar Kach Parshas Mincha Min V'Nefesh Ad Sakriv. And if you have time, V'im Yesh Loi Pnai Yikra Gam Parshas Sav Min V'Zois Toiras HaMincha Ad Yikadesh V'Koyen Yosef. And if you're a Koyen, then you say Kohanim have an extra obligation with the mincha. You should say V'chol Minchas Koyen Kolil Tihya. We had in Yevamis recently that the mincha of a Koyen is completely burnt. V'achar Kach Yomer Yiras Mofanecha Gila Krafti Mincha. Now, are you obligated to say this? We said no. But if you know you violated an avera that you're chayav achatas, let's say you forgot and you flicked on a light switch on Shabbos, then yeah, you should say open up the Chumash, say the Parsha of the Chatas, or let's say a person violated mitzvah saseh. They woke up late, they're mevatel Kriya Shema, so say the Parsha of the Oila. Then v'achika Parsha Shlomim, v'toida, min v'im zevach Shlomim, ad v'im enatzoin, uva Parsha Tzav, min v'zois taras ha-Shlomim, ad b'midbar Sinai, v'achar kach Parshas Nesachim, v'Parsha Shlach, min v'yidaber, D'chisavoyu ad itchem. V'achar kach yomer yiratz muvnach yilu krafti shlamim. So after the oila, and then after the mincha, then you have the shlamim, and now a chatos. Uparshas chatos b'vayikra mim v'nefesh achas techta ad v'nislach loy v'myesh loy pnai yikra gam b'parshas sav about the chatos min v'zois toras hachatas ad ba'esh tisoref v'lo yomer yihiratzain. You don't say the yihiratzain by the chatos. By an oila, you could say the yihiratzain, because you could say if I'm chayv an oila, it should be like an oila. If I'm not chayv an oila, it should be like a carbon nadava. But a chatos, you can't bring a carbon chatos as a nadava, so you don't say this yihiratzain. But v'im yoidea bevadei shechayv chatos, if you know for sure I'm that you're chayv chatos, yomer yiratzain sheyizei nechshav kilo krafti chatos. V'im loy noidaloi bevadei shechata. Now, what if you don't know for sure you sinned, but you have a guilty conscience, like something's bothering you? You know, I think I may have sinned, but I don't know for sure. In other words, I know I sinned, but I forgot. In other words, if you know you sinned, you forgot, and you have a guilty conscience, then you could say the yiratzain yomer yiratzain mofanecha im avarti avera shechayav ma'aleh chatas sheyezen nechshav ki'ilu hikravti chatas ve'im lav yiyeh kekar b'Torah. Otherwise, it will be just like reading the Torah. So I have one simple question. Can an avel say Korbanos? We said no. An avel can't say Korbanos. But the Mishnah Berurah is saying that if I know I violated a chatas, I could say the hiratzain. But if I have a guilty conscience that I probably did not, I just don't remember what it was, then you could say the hiratzain. And if I'm chayiv a chatas, let it be like a chatas. If I'm not chayiv a chatas, it should be like learning Torah. That implies that if I'm chayiv a chatas, then it's not like learning Torah. So why can't an avel who knows he did an avera say the parsha of the chatas? Because then it's not like learning Torah, then it's like bringing a chatas. So you have to say that it's like bringing a chatas, because by learning the Torah, it's like bringing the chatas. But if you're not chayiv a chatas, it's just like learning Torah. But either way, the mechanism is limanat Torah. We're just going to read to the end of the Siman. Uparshas Asham, if you have time, to say again the oila and the mincha and the shlamim and the chatas and the asham. The best thing is to avoid sinning, and this way, that's why Bizman Hazeh, we're such big tzaddikim, we don't say this anymore because we never do averos. Mem Aleph, Parshas Asham, the Parshas Sav Min v'Zois Toras Asham ad Asham hu v'myesh lo pnai yikra gam v'vayikra the Asham v'achar kach yomer yiras mofanecha shem neschayafti Asham sheyizen nechshav kilo krafti Asham. V'imlav yeh k'kara b'Torah. V'im yodea shechayev asham. If you know you're chayev asham, yomer yiratzim ufanecha sheyezeh nechshav kilo krafti asham. V'im chayev asham taloi. What if you're also chayev asham taloi? Yikra Parshas asham taloi. V'yomer yiratzim ufanecha sheyezeh nechshav kilo krafti asham taloi. Now you're going to have to get up very early to say all of these parshas. Then you say the parsha of Oila v'Yored. Which siddur is a sin? Maybe in the siddur Vilna it hasn't. I think it does. But in our siddur it's not. It doesn't appear. Now, we know every korban needs an pouring of wine. Do I have to say nesachim after the oila, after the mincha, after the shlomim, or can I just do one nesachim and it covers everything? Ein sarach lomer parshat zon kolech le'echad. The dai shamar pamach is good to say one time. Mishu avel lo yomer parshas korbanos. But you do say izel mekayman. So the korbanos we're talking about here are the parshias in the Torah. B'Shabbos v'Yom Tov you don't say the hiratzain, because you can't bring a nedava on Shabbos and Yom Tov. But the parsha you could say ve'imhu ben Torah. It's better to learn the parsha of the week. So they asked Reb Chaim, what about to learn Gemara? Reb Chaim said, no, it doesn't say that. If you want, instead of saying the parsha of the parsha's korbanos, you could learn the parsha of the week, not learn other things. Again, like we said, we don't really do this. We don't do it ever.
So that's just limud according to him on Shabbos and Yom Tov?
On Shabbos and Yom Tov, what? Yeah, it's just limud. It's just limud. But if you want to supplant it, it has to be dafka. Anyway, now.
And how come in Musaf we don't say that you hear about so? Because it's Shabbos. Like if we're saying the parsha of Korban, why don't we have?
We're actually. I mean, why don't we say Yiratzon in Musaf? I mean, that's what Musaf is. The whole Musaf is, Hashem should consider it as if we brought the Musaf of Shabbos. Why don't we explicitly say the Yiratzon? That's basically the whole point of the Tefillah. That's what it sounds like. Now, one last thing is when it comes to Korbanos, you should know what you're talking about. You should learn the Inyan first in the Gemara or in the Rambam, so you understand what you're saying, and then it will be considered. As if you brought it. Sivkata Memvav. Toiv l'misha noig b'zeh. Someone who has this custom, it's a good thing sheyilmoid matchila esvanyanim to learn the Inyan first min haGemara or min haRambam. In order to understand what you're saying. And by doing so, it will be mamish considered like you brought a korban. Have a masader. To that which we say every day, Abai have a masader. It's mitzvah try to understand what you're learning. Now, a personal recommendation is, we who at least try to say the HaTamid, probably it's a good idea to learn what the HaTamid means, and it will be considered as if you brought the HaTamid. Maybe when we get up to Parshas Pinchas, that would be a good parsha share for Parshas Pinchas, to learn the parsha of the HaTamid. Thank you very much, everyone. Shkoyach Reb Shuki for the breakfast. Thank you, Reb Gordon, for picking it up. And have a great day, everyone. Kol tov.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.